Hi guys, so today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create this portfolio using Next.js and Chakra UI for a component library. So this is how the project looks like. Let me just show you a quick demo. So we have the hero section with the face of the guy or maybe a woman. So this portfolio can be used by anyone, designers, developers, and anyone literally. So then we have a simple about us. So you can see here we have, I'm a web developer, web designer, all your details, your phone number. Then we have a button here to download the CV. We have the brands, projects. So the projects, you have a filter up here, whereby you can filter on the projects categories. Next up, you have the testimonials. So these are, you have added 3 testimonials, so you can add your testimonials. And then finally, we have the latest news, which will hold the blogs for you. And then finally we have the footer and the copyright. Okay, so this portfolio is responsive as well. Okay, now you can see it's responsive. We have this navigation on mobile devices. We also see that everything is responsive. The projects, design, development, all of these are responsive as well, and the testimonials as well, and then the footer as well. So we'll be creating these using Next.js and Chakra UI, as I said. And then without wasting time, let's get started. So I'll link down the repository of these in the description. So in this repository, we have the finished code, which lies on the master branch. And then we have the initial branch, which holds the initial or the starter for the project. So we are not going to go through how to set up Chakra UI, how to set up Chakra UI and the others. So let me just open Chakra UI. So Chakra UI is a component library for styling applications. So it has building blocks. So these building blocks are called snippets, which help you create apps very fast. Okay. All right. So it has many components which are called snippets. It has its own way of theming. So I'll link a YouTube video that I made of how to set up Chakra UI in Next.js. So you won't go through all that. You're just going to get started as fast as possible. So in the docs, if you go back to the master branch, which has the finished code in case you want to go to the finished code. Also, don't forget to fork this repository, leave a start so that you can help others get to learn through it. So you can copy this cloning instruction here, and then you can follow the instruction. I'm just going to quickly. So navigate the folder you want to create the project in, and then paste the command. So it's git clone. Let me just explain the command. So the command is git clone -b. So the -b, let me just make it big. So git clone -b, you specify the branch, you want the initial branch, and then you specify this, you want just the single branch, and then you have the repository URL. So git clone -b is for the branch, you want the initial branch, and then you specify you want a single branch only, and then the repository URL. So if you run this, so it should load the project. Then the next thing is UCD to the project. It's called Creative Portfolio YouTube. And then open it using VS Code. It has opened on my other window, but I'll just drag it here so that you can see. Then I can trust the others. This one is VS Code stuff. So we have the project here. Let me just quickly show you take you through the project structure and the folder structure. So this is a typical Next.js application. So you can see you have a global.css file, which is for CSS globally. We have our layout file, which imports our global.css file. Something I forgot to do is to install the dependencies. So in this project, I'm using pnpm, but you can use any of the other libraries that you would like to. So you can just do pnpm install. And then as it installs, I'll just go through the project and show you what it is. So we have the fonts, we have the typical Next.js layout, and we have this provider, which is from Chakra UI, which is basically a context that provides all the stylings and everything. And then we have the metadata. So this metadata controls the favicon. So the favicon is the favorite icon which is shown on the browsers. Let me just show you this one. You can see this image here. That is the favorite icon. Next up is the keywords. So this one you can use them to control the meta tags for your project. Then you have our initial page, which is the home page, which for now it has just a button which says hello world. In our providers, this is specific to the components. So this one holds the components folder. Our node modules, these are typical node modules for JavaScript project. Our public, which is holding the public, the images and all the other assets. Also, I noted something. In the finished project, the master project, we have more images. So what I'll do is that I'll attach a folder for the public folder as a zip, which you will do. So what you'll do is that you'll come to the public and delete the public folder. And then the assets that I will attach, I'll attach a public folder that is zipped. So you can just download it from there. Okay. All right. So let's continue. So what I'll do right now is to delete my public folder. This is what you'll do. And then attach the zip file that I'll attach in the description. So in my case, I'll just open this up. So I'll just open this, my finished project, and then drag the public folder there, because I just realized we need it for our project. So what I'll do is that I can copy the folder. All right, so the folder is copied successfully, and then we have all these assets that we can use for our project. So hopefully you will be able to pull that off. Then we have our theme. So this is the theme specific for Chakra UI. Then you have git ignore. We have the ESLint license. We have the next config, which holds the configurations for Next.js. We have our package.json, typically for node applications, JavaScript based, npm lock, readme, and then we have a tsconfig.json. So our dependencies are installed, and then we'll start by running our project. So you run our project by npm dev, and the reason you do dev is based on the package.json. So the scripts here are what you run using your node version, the library you use, either yarn pnpm or the one that you would like, your preference. So if I say pnpm dev, it is basically running this script next dev. So it looks for pnpm dev, then it runs next dev. So if I create another one here that does something else, then that is what will be executed. So we'll just do pnpm dev. And then our project is running on localhost port 3000. So that's what I'll do. Localhost port 3000. Okay, so it is compiling and retrying. Hopefully everything will be all right. All right, so we have our project set up. Then we have the hello world button that I showed. Let me just close that and then open so this is how routing works in Next.js. You need a page to route to, and then so in the app folder, you need one page.tsx file, which is your home route or the slash route slash. Let me just show you real quick. So the folder structure is app. Then inside app, you have page.tsx. So this one is the home route. Then if you create another folder for about, another folder called about, and then add a page there, this one will be the slash about. All right. Yeah. So since this is not a routing tutorial, let's get quick in. So this is our button, the hello world button you just saw. So this is the hello button that we just saw. Then you can go back. Another thing I would just like to point out is that these providers that we have here, we are forcing the dark mode in our project. Okay, so our project is in dark mode by default. So if you're wondering how this one is dark, you can just change this to light, and then our project should be light mode. Okay, yeah. So all right, so let's get started. So where do we start? So the first thing I'll just like to start is the navbar. All right, so this navbar, you can see the navbar is, so what do we want to do in the navbar? This is like a container. So we need a container for the navbar, and then inside the container we have a flex, and then you can, this one is a justify space between, so everything is spaced equally. So we can have one container, another one that holds the nav items, and the final one that holds the button. So what I like doing is creating a folder for the navbar, because sometimes you can have multiple navbars. So it's good to have this one, then create such a file, and then using this an extension can quickly scaffold the project. So I just name this one navbar. Okay, and then something I would like to do, because the navbar is for the whole project, so in case you have multiple pages, then you add the navbar in the layout. A layout is what umbrellas the whole application. So if I add navbar here, I have auto import. So if I add the navbar here, it will be available on all the pages, because essentially the navbar should not change. So we need the navbar. So since the navbar should not change, then if you add the navbar here, it should be in all the pages. And also I forgot to return my dark mode here. So if we go back, so this is the finished one. Let's go to this one. You can see our navbar on top. So we can start working on that navbar as we would like. So the first thing you'll notice on our navbar is that our navbar has a border. So we can start from there. We create a container and then add a border on it. So let's go back to our navbar. All right. So here is our navbar. So in Chakra UI, you have these reusable components. So essentially, a box in Chakra is like a div. What do I mean by a div? This is a div. So a box in Chakra is an extended div that you can now start styling using Chakra design system. So if you don't know Chakra, don't worry. The docs are quite clear. I'll just show you how we do it. So in our navbar, we return a div, but a div in Chakra is a box, which can help us style using props. So it has a border bottom of 1 pixel, solid, and then use You can use this syntax to grab the color. So this one, you just grab the color of from there. Then you can just go back. Okay, our navbar has nothing, so let's just add something inside the navbar. You can say hello, or maybe add a height. So height of forum. So we have added a height. I think there's an issue. So we have a border of 1 pixel. Sorry, I missed the closing bracket here. Okay, you can see our border bottom. So next up, we'll start building the project. So we'll start with our heading. This one is a header. And then we have another container and another one. So let me just show you what the flex looks like. So the first thing we'll do is we need flex. Okay. And then something I forgot is because since we are using, this is like a div in normal HTML, we want to become semantic. We want to use semantic tags. So what we can do is we can say something like this as nav. So as you say as nav, instead of rendering a div under the hood, it will render a nav element. So let me just show you this. So I know time is going, but we need this to understand. So if we come here to our project, let me just look for the div. This one you can see. So this one is our div. You can see it is rendering a div, but rendering a div does not tell the Google bots, all these crawlers, what you are essentially doing. So you can do something like as nav so that we can be semantic so that Google can know this is a navigation. Okay. Yeah. So now you can see it is rendering a nav element. So you can subscribe to the channel so that we'll still talk about semantics of HTML and all that. So, but right now let's go back and remove our height. And then as we said, we need a flex. Okay. So inside the flex, what do we need? We need 3 things. We need the heading. Now in Chakra, we have a heading element. So if you have a heading, then the heading will be TechWithTwin. Then the next thing we need is another flex container. Flex. Then inside the flex, we have nav items. So what we can do is create the nav items. So just copy paste them. Let me just show you where they are at. We can go to the finished project. Finish project, then head over to the components, the navigation. I just want you to grab something. I want you to grab the nav items instead of just creating this. Might end up wasting most of our time. So you can have the nav items here. And then you can come and loop over the nav items. We can loop over the nav items dot map each item, and then we grab the index for using it as a key. Then we can render a text element. So inside Chakra, instead of rendering a paragraph, we render a text. And then inside we can render item.label. So item.label is coming from this label. Then we need a key, which will be I. We can use I, which is the index of the item. And then finally we need a button. We need a button. Also the button we install, we get it from Chakra UI. So the button says, contact me. So if we go back to the project, you can see we have started doing something. So we have a lot to do. Something I just noticed that our project is squished. Okay, our project is squeezed to the end. So what I can do, what I did is, so what we can do, this is what normally I do, is we can create a utils folder here. And then inside utils, we can have constants. So I want to use this one for my constants. So I want to use this one for my constant variables. And then what I need is a margin. I want to have a margin. So let me just create margin X. Now this one is what will be wrapping all my containers. But I want to do it like this because it's easier to change. So the base, I want 5%. And then for the medium size, I want 7%. For the medium, no, for this SM small. And then this one we can do something like 8%. Then for the large, we can do 10%. And then we export these. So what I'll do now is add the margin to my navbar. Okay. So I come here to my flex container. I don't want to add the 8 here because I might need to add like a background color. And if you have a margin and a background color, it won't work well. Let me just show you. So if I can say, also point to note if you are new to Chakra UI is that instead of having styles and now let me just show you dot container background color red, we don't do this. So in Chakra UI, you type inside the components itself as props. And then we have, you can say background color in full, but we have shortcuts. Okay. We can say background color red. We pass the styles as props, but we have shortcuts. So if you say BG, that's for background color. All right. So if we do like that and add a margin here, I'll just use the margin I just created. Let me show you what will happen. This is what will happen. So that's why we need a wrapper so that the contents themselves, we can add the margin. This is what I mean, is that we remove this here and add it here. And then now the content itself is what has the margin. So the next thing we need to do is to justify these elements like they are here. Each element takes up its own width. So the property there is called justify content. This one is for flex container. Now, instead of saying justify content, let me just do that again here so that anyone can understand. I know someone might not have done Chakra. So instead of doing justify display flex, align items center, justify content, space between. Now, instead of doing this, we pass this directly to the components itself. But since we are using a flex container, you know what it does. It has display flex in it by default. So now the shorthand for justify content is justify, and now we can say space between. Okay, you see? Then we have the next thing we need to do is now we need to align these items in the center. You can see these ones are on top. So we need to align them at the center. So we can remove my background because I don't want the background. And then we can align to the center. And then we can add a padding Y of 1 rem. You can now see it has started taking the shape of the initial finished project. So the next thing we need to do is that this flex container, the items are close together. So since the items are so close together, we need to give this one a gap. So we can give it a gap of 4. 1, 2. You can see now they have a gap between them. And then So, and then let's go to the heading. You can see the heading is smaller. This heading is smaller than this one. So we can increase the heading as well. So similarly, we can pass props. So the first thing I need to do is to increase the font size to 3XL. And then something, now the text looks similar. Something you might have noticed is that the highlight, I want to add the highlight right now for the selection. So that what we can do now is going back to our theme. Now in Chakra UI, you don't have to write everything in the global. The theme itself allows you to do it. So if I can come here, there is a property called global CSS, which is an object, and then I can start doing my global stuff here. The first thing I need is to select all the selections. This is a pseudo element for it. So it's also an object. Then I want the background to be secondary and the color to be white. So how are you able to use the secondary? So the secondary can be found here. This is the secondary color, and then it has a default. All right. So if you go back, you can see now our highlight is now matching our theme, all our color scheme. So now we'll move faster. The next thing you'll notice is this one has a gradient. So we can go ahead and start writing that gradient. So that gradient is on a text. So we can do a background color. So to add a gradient to a text, because a heading is a text, this one is a H2. If I hover over here, you can, it's not saying, but this one should render something like a H2 element, this one, okay? All right, so this one is simply a H2 element, so I can add a background of a gradient. You saw it was a gradient, so you can copy from me. Linear gradient, then it's 95 degrees, or else we can copy these from the project, because instead of typing out the gradient, you can go here and copy this gradient. I don't want us to keep typing things. We just need to learn how to write projects. So if you add a gradient, we go back. Oops, now you can see the gradient is applied on the background. And here the gradient is on the text. So what do? There is a property which helps do that, which is called background clip, whereby you clip on the text itself. Now everything lights up. So let's style these ones to match the colors of these. So the first thing we'll do is to make it semi-bold. Right? We make it semi-bold, we change the color. Okay, you can see on hover we have a color. So first thing we need to change the font weight, the color, and the font size. I think this one is larger than what we have here. Then we can see how that fares. All right, let's go continue. So we have font size of large, then font weight of semi-bold, then a color of gray dot something like 400. Then how to add hovers. Hovers, you prefix with an underscore and light your hover properties. Similar way. So you can see, just to reiterate. So this is the font size, the font weight, the color, and the hover. And if you go back to our project, that's exactly what should be applied. That's one. Then finally, we'll work on the button. The button has a much higher border radius. The color is white, and then it has a background gradient. We just need to do that. Okay. So the first thing you need to do is add a background. So we can still copy the background we had. I hope you had it on the clipboard. You can copy it from the top. Then the border radius should be quite large. So it's XL. Then a color of white. Then you can add a font to it of semi-bold as well. And then text transform, we want it to be uppercase. Uppercase. So the properties as well. So we said we want a huge border radius. The color is white. The font weight is bold, semi-bold, and then the text transform is uppercase. So you can see color is white, background is the gradient, and then more rounder, and then it's uppercase. Exactly what we did here. Alright guys, you can see now we are done with the navbar, and then the next thing to work on, I just want us to finish bit by bit. So the next thing we can work on is you can see these things are similar. So the next thing we need to work on is the responsive design. You can see everything is broken up. Next, let's work on the responsive design. So I can leave it at that, and then we can continue. So the first thing we need to do here is that we need to hide some of these elements. So the first elements we need to hide is the middle section and then the button. So that's very simple. Let's just first do that. So the first thing we need to do is now this is the beauty of using Chakra UI, is that you don't need to write media queries. You have properties that can alter that. So we just do hide below. And then since I don't want to keep repeating, I can add my threshold here. So threshold is equals to LG. And then, so that is on large screen. Then I can use the threshold here, hide below, and also for the button as well. Hide below. So what does this mean? This means we are going to hide. We have, okay, so we use the threshold here. So this one means we are going to hide the middle part and the button below the large screens. And that's it. If you come back, we can see it's not available on large screen. So the next thing we need to do is to add the hamburger menu. So the hamburger menu here, which will open a drawer, just like a drawer. And then the beauty of Chakra is that you realize that all this is done for us. So we just need to add some of these functionalities, but let's now focus on adding the hamburger menu here. Okay, so I don't think, let me just check if I have React icons installed. We have. So you can go to React icons. So this is how I like structuring this. So to structure this, what I do is that I go back to the nav bar and create a mobile nav, which will control all those things and show the hamburger menu. So mobile nav. So this one is a mobile nav. And then we can start building the mobile nav. So the first thing we need to do is to add something called a drawer. So we can go to the Chakra documentation. Chakra documentation and then add a drawer. So we can come here and search a drawer. So I told you these are snippets that we can use. So just check. You see? So we can build upon these to create ourselves a navigation on smaller screen. So you can go here to the code and copy paste the code. But I'll just walk you through what should happen. So we need a drawer, these drawers. Let me just copy this. Just want to show you how the procedure goes by. So you can import all these from Chakra. You can import a button. We'll delete these in a moment, but we have all these, and then now we said that we have hidden two of our elements on smaller screens because we hid them below the threshold, which is the large. So which means we can come here at the bottom and create another element. We just finish. So now this one you hide from, not below. So the other ones we hide below, this one we hide from, and then we hide from the same threshold. This is why I had to create this variable, because I don't want to type all this. So what should happen? These two are hidden below the large screen. This one is shown on smaller screen and hidden on larger screen. So this one will now show because it hits the criteria. So what do we expect? We expect to see this navbar, and this navbar renders a drawer with a button, and we just copy pasted this drawer from the docs. Okay, you can see we have that button, and then it is opening. Now we just need to customize this drawer to match our project's requirements, which is having the nav items. Okay, so we can go back home. I don't know whether we have exported. Yeah, we have exported. We import these nav items and add them. So the first thing we need to do is to look for an icon, not an icon, but yeah, the hamburger icon. So what you do is you go to React icons and then just search hamburger. Okay, I like this one. You just come and copy paste this. All right. And then you need to install React icons, but I already did that in our project. So if you come here, we have React icons, so we can use the icons. So the first thing we need to do is that we need to remove this button. You don't need the button. And then we can use a box, a div, essentially, and then wrap our hamburger menu. Now this here is something cooler when using Chakra UI. So you can use a box element, which is a div, and give it a special property called asChild. What does asChild do? asChild does this because this is not a Chakra component, so we cannot style it as we are used to. So background color red. You can do something like the size. We can't. This is not a Chakra component. So what does this help us? So this one helps us to style these components as this component as if it was a Chakra component, but using a box. So this box will forward all the props here as styles. Hope you got me. And then the box size to be 8. The box size is essentially height and width. Instead of saying height 50, width 50, just do box size 50. Yeah. And I hope that demystifies everything. You can see now you have a hamburger, which is controlling what is showing on the drawer. So the next thing we need to do is to just fill in the data for the drawer, which we will do very quick. So the next thing we need to do is we don't need a header, but the header is useful for positioning the close button. So you can just close the header there. We don't need this p tag. What we can do, we will map over the nav items. But map each item. We did this before. And then this is what I did, but yeah, still works. So we need a text. the text, you can say item dot label and give this one something like the key prop. All right, and then for the button, we don't need the footer, and then we can leave the close button as is, and then we can delete unused imports because TypeScript doesn't want that. Then if you go back, you can now see this one. So the next thing is to style these things to make sure they match. So what the first thing I want to do is to add space between these items. So in Chakra UI, to add space between items, you just come here and say space Y. I want a space of 6. Going back, they are spaced. The next thing is to make them big. We increase their size and make them somehow bold, semi-bold. Then add a padding between them. All right, so first thing I'll add is a padding. Then a font size. I'll do something like extra large. And then a font weight of semi-bold. Yes, so you can see everything is taking shape. So the next thing I want to do is, but we can do this one later, but if I forget, I'll leave you up to it to navigate as someone clicks this. Because we have not created these sections, I'll not do that right now. So we are done with that step. And then the next thing we need to start creating is, we need to start creating is you can see everything is clicking. And the next thing we need to create is the hero section, this hero section. And that's what we'll do next. Okay, all right, so we are back, and then the next thing we need to do, as I said, is that we need to create, this one is our home page. So I normally create a component for the home and then import those components to our app. So if I go to my home, the first thing I always create is something called index.ts. And then through this index is where I export all the components in home. It will show you how easy that is. And the first thing we need to create here is the hero section. Then using this shortcut, we can create our hero section. So I can call it the hero section. Okay, let's see what is required for the hero section so that we can know what we can do. So what you realize in the hero section is that we have two sections which are equally spaced. So if you check this section and this section, they are equally spaced. So we essentially need to get the two containers which are flexed together. Okay. And then, no, we can't do that. So what we will do is, this one is an image. Okay. So this one is a background. We can add this one as a background and then push this text on the left side. So let me show you what I'm saying. So if you go to our public, so let's see where it is. Oh, this one. You can see this one is a background image, which will fill our background. So let's start from there. We also need to add a height to it. So I normally start with a box as well because this is like a div. And then for semantics, as I said, we need to tell either you want to do SEO on this, you need to tell Google what this one is. This one is a section. So the similarity for these and normal HTML is like this. So essentially this one is exactly equals to this. I hope you guys are understanding. I would like to know in the comments. So the next thing we need to do is to add a background image. Now, as I said in Chakra UI, we have simpler naming. So you can see now a background image I can do BG image. And let me just repeat this again. So we said maybe we have our hero. Then you can say background image. We normally do like this. We do URL. Then we give the path. You can do maybe bg.png. But in Chakra, this one is much simpler. We just add a prop like that and then give it the exact URL, bg.jpg. The zone is exactly equals to this. Okay. Yes. So just delete this. Go back. Something is wrong. Then the background, we want it to, let me just not add more props. I just want you to see. The next thing I need is a flex container to hold the text. And inside the text, so this one will just hold the, so this one should essentially hold another container. So let me just show you another container called a stack in Chakra UI. This one will just hold our heading. I showed you a heading. Then for semantics, I want this one to be a h1 element, which will say, hey, so this one is a representation of an apostrophe. I want to write something like but you can just write like that. You can see you have to escape that with underscore apos. So you just essentially pick one. Then I want this one to be in a new line. And then maybe have it as a box. I want a span here. So as I said, we don't have a span element in Chakra. You can use a box and then pass as child. Then I can say, now here you'll just write your name. And then we have a button after that. So you can have a button. And then the button has contact me. And then here inside the flex, you remember what I showed you about the margin? I want to add the height to the flex so that it doesn't have cause issues, but you can still add it to the box. So the margin, I'll add the margin here. I showed you why you need to add inside the element. Then I can add a height of something like 90 viewport height. Okay, now if you go back, nothing is showing. You can guess why. We need to use the component. So as I said, this is what I normally do. I come here and use this syntax. This is the syntax I use. And then let me show you why I need to use this. But you don't need to use this. You can just import these stuffs as you use them. Let me remove the unused import. So you can see I'm importing hero from components home and not from components home/hero. Okay. This is what this index.tx helps us to achieve. If I come here and reload, so we have an error in the drawer. So we can just go and try to fix that. The drawer is in the navbar. It's saying something like, I think we can essentially do this. Have a box there and then a key to be here. Okay. And then if you go back, the error should be gone. But we still have an issue with the box as child. Let me go and fix that first. So I think it is box as child. Oh, all right. We need a span here so that because If it is merging the props to the adjacent child, then we don't have a child. Then why will it merge? Because now whatever we style the box will be added to the span. And I said the reason we need this is because the span element is not a Chakra component. So we can use this syntax so that we can style as if it was a Chakra component, but this one, everything you add here will be merged to the span. I hope I have explained enough. And then you can now start seeing this. So you probably know why this one is happening. This one is here. And then in our case, this one is gone. Completely gone. So now let's first fix this one. So the first thing I need to fix is, you can see these ones are here, but in this one, they are in the center. And that's why we wrapped this one, the whole thing here is a flex container. So in a flex, we can align these items to the center. Okay. All right. So if we go back, this one is a flex. I did not explain about the stack. So the stack is similar to the flex in that the stack has flex direction column. Okay. You're stacking everything on top of each other. And then it has a gap of 2. So I think the first thing I'll do is to increase the gap. Then align items to the center. Then here on the flex, I can say align center as well. So you see why I'm doing that. You see where they jumped. And then they are all aligned in the center. You can see this one is like the container. Then they are in the side, in the center. And then the gap from this to this. Okay. Yeah. So the next thing is to increase the size of the heading. So you can see this one is small. This one is too huge. And style it to be, we can text align it to the center instead of having it, the text starting justified from the start. Let's just do that real quick. So text align, center, font size. We increase the font size to something like 5 rem. Then I need to add something called the line height. Line height. I like it to be exactly equal to the font size. Then the font weight to be extra bold. I hope that's clear. And then now we are starting to get into the realm of the project. So the next thing you realize is that this text has something we did with the text up here. So we're just going to redo that again. So we head over to the navbar and then copy the styles for the background. Go back. And then this is why we needed that, because okay, we have something here similar. So the same way I told you guys, we need the span here so that we can merge from here. I've just realized that we don't need this, because in Chakra, you can create a component and then do like that. So this one will still render the span as I did earlier, in that this is simpler code. And you remember us doing that for the navbar as well. Hope this one is well understood. And then we can do the background here. And then instead of continuing, I'll show you, you see, then you can do the background clip it to the text. So you can do BG clip or background clip. Either of them will work. Then the BG clip is text. And then we are getting somewhere. The next thing I want to work on is this person. So this person on the here, it looks like this person is away. We need to bring this person here, somewhere here. So how can we do that? With the background position property. All right, so the background position property, sometimes you have to joke around with it until you find the sweet spot. So I'm just going to show you which sweet spot worked for me. So the background position, this one is what worked for me, 50% and 90%. Okay. And then before I forget, we'll go giving these IDs so that we can navigate to them using the nav items. So if we go back, you can see this guy is gone. Excuse me. So you can see it starts looking similar, but here this person is gone. So let's see why. We can give this a background size of cover. And then if you go back, everything now looks similar. So the next thing we need to work on is the button. You can see this button here is grayed, and then text is white. This one is white, and then the text is black. And let's work on that. We go to the button. So here we have variants. So we can use this variant. We want to reduce the size. And then we want to, no, we don't need this. And then border radius of 2 extra large. And then everything now looks exactly similar. So the next thing I want to work on is the responsive design for this. You see, it's almost responsive, but let's do some adjustments based on what is happening here. So we are just blueprinting this. You can see not much of a difference, but let's work on it. So first, you realize that this one doesn't go all the way. So we need to tackle that first. So what I can do now, so what I'm going to do is that you can see this guy is taking the whole width, but now for the phone, we don't need it taking the whole width. So what we do in the phone version is we come to our flex container, and then we don't need a fixed height. Now, here's how easy it is to create responsive styles. We just use this syntax. So base, I want it to be something like 80, viewport height, and then on large screen to be 90. Just that, instead of writing media queries. At a large screen, you do this. This is all done for you free of charge. So if you come back, you can see now it is not taking the whole width. Okay, guys, so let's switch gears and continue creating this section here. That's what we are going to work on next. Stay tuned. All right, guys, we are back. So this is where we are in the progress of the application. So let me walk you through the thought process. So what we need here is a container which has a fixed width, and then it has a margin auto to make sure it is at the middle. And then here we have a flex. One side has the person, and the next side has the stack with all these. So let me just have that blueprint. Then we'll figure out how to add these gradients as well. So we close all this, then create a component called about.tsx, about section. So what have we said on the about section? We have said we need two sections, but as always, let's start with a box, which is a div which will give us an outline of where we need to start. So this one is a box. So the first thing we need to add is an ID. This ID will help us to link to that. Then we said for semantics, we want this to be as a section. Okay. Yes. And then we needed to give it a width. So the width, I'll give it 60 viewport width. And then after that, we need two columns. So in Chakra UI, they have simplified the grid system. So you go here, the Chakra UI, they have simplified the grid in that if you need two columns, two exact columns, you can use this component called simple grid and pass some props. So like this one, you can see simple grid, pass columns, and the gap, just that. So that's exactly what we are going to do in our about us. So you can see a simple grid with two grids, with two components inside. That's it. So this one is a simple grid, but you can use a flex as well. And then I like doing the responsive styles as soon as I start typing because I know what I want. In the phone, I want one column, and then on larger phones or tablets, I need two. That's it. So then add a gap, and then I want these items, item center. And then inside the grid, so align item center will essentially, I'll just show you. Inside the grid, we need two things. The first thing we need is the image and the components with the text and all that. So the first thing, I just have a blueprint. So I want our image to be covered by a div, which is and then use a Next.js image. And then there are required props for Next.js image. Also, guys, everything I'm talking about is in the documentation. So everything I'm saying here is in the documentation. So if I come here and search the image, so it's taking too much time to load, but everything is in the documentation. I'll show you later. Everything is in the documentation. The first thing you need to provide is the source, which is about.png. Then the width, I will say something like 300. And then the height is something like 300. And then the alt, which is about me image. And then the next thing we need to do, we said a simple grid needs two things. So in ours, we need one, a stack, and then the other one is an image. So this one will hold the heading. And then say, I hope you remember what I said about this. Web developer. And then you can have a text. I said a text is a paragraph tag in Chakra. And then you can say web developer working for TechWithTwin.com in Nairobi. Then before I forget, let me just add the button. And then inside the button, you can say download my CV. And then something you realize is that we need the contact data. I'm not going to type that out. So I'll show you how it is. So you go to the home components, then go to the about, and in the bottom, grab the contact us data. Then come back real quick. And let's finish up this component. So let's do the imports. So just highlight and then control space, and then you can import the component. So the next thing we need to add here is we can map over the contact us data dot map for each item, and I is the index of each item. We can render a flex. We want, so we want this, an icon and the text. So this one, we put it inside a flex container so that they can be side by side, and then we align it at the center, and then everything looks nice. So we have the heading, the about me section, and then the icon plus the text. That's it. So you can add the key gap of something like 2. Then we align to the center. So we align the icon and the text. And then I hope I showed you this. Then we change the color to our primary color. Then data.icon. No, let me just use item. So, and the next is the text. Then we say item.label. Okay, we are almost getting there, but let's see how things are turning out. We have not imported, so we do the same thing for the about us. Default as about from /about. You can see time is going real quick, but it's better time to go, but you understand, which is all that matters. So that's, then you can add about here. Now, so to retaliate again, I said the page, this page is for our home page. So essentially, I'm rendering all the components because components are building blocks for our application. So if you go back, we can see it here. So something we forgot is to add the columns. So if we go back to the about, oh, we do have the columns. Okay, let me see why we have an issue. Okay, something else I also forgot is we can add a margin auto so that it gets to the middle. I don't know why it doesn't. Okay, so we have our image. So let's start adding background color so that you can know where the issue is. PG is equals to red. And then this one, BG is equals to green. Okay, so these ones are taking the whole width. So there's an issue. So we've missed let me show you what we missed. It's columns, not column. I think I wrote column. So yeah, and then using these responsive styles, I told you. So you can come, if you are new to Chakra, you can say responsive design. This is the syntax. So use font weight for medium instead of writing media queries. And then now things start looking nice. Now we just continue with our project. We can remove the background colors. So also the background colors are very good to debug. So the next thing we need to do. Who can guess? I hope this one was interactive. So you can see it's almost similar to what we have. Only some of the things that are not. So you can see the image here is larger than what we have here. We can start with that. And then you can see that it is almost here. It's squeezed. So we can add a margin bottom. So let's start with that. So yeah, I'll start with the margin bottom. So I'll use a responsive style here because I can see time is going. So you'll understand what I'm doing. So in the small screens, I want 5 rem. Then in large screens, I want 10. The next thing we have said you work on is the image height. So I'll just come here and add a height of 25 rem. So you have a shorthand for the height, which is h, but you can still write the height as a full. It has a border radius of extra large. And then this one, because we want all these properties to be merged to the image, we can say as child. And then we can give it a width of 100%. Then object fit of cover. We want the image to cover the whole section we just give it. And if you go back, everything now starts to look exactly similar. Okay. Yeah, you can see. So the next thing we need to work on is these ones. They're almost similar. The button is going all the way. We work on the button and then we add some space. And then that's it. And then we increase the font size of this text. So let's start with the font size for that text, which is just writing the font size, which is 3 extra large. What else do I need to do? The gap. We can leave that for now. Then we work on the button. So the button is too close to the top. We can add a margin top. Then we can give it a width of fit content. It fits its own content, and then a variant of subto. Okay. And also something I forgot, we also need responsive styles for this because I'm saying time is going and I want to be able to show all this. So the responsive styles were, let's first add, I know this one someone is waiting. Let's add these gradients. So let me walk you through what the thought process is. So this gradient, these are gradients that are blurred out, and then we prevent them from going above outside of the container. How do you do that? Overflow hidden. Okay. We add an overflow hidden, and then we create, this one is a circle. Essentially, if you can see, this one is a circle. I don't know whether you can see my cursor. This one is a circle. And then this one is a circle, which are brought on top and blurred out. You get me? Yeah. So we will start with that. And the first thing you need to work with the positions is the parent is always needed to be position relative. So let's start from there. I know it will be, the first thing we have said is, because of time, I'll not show exactly why, but in smaller screens, we want the width to be a bit larger. That's why we need to use responsive styles for here. Viewport width, and then on large screens is when we want the 60. I hope that's simpler for you guys. Then the overflow, we need to hide the overflow. For now, I won't, but I will do that later. Then we need to add a background of black. Even if we have a background of black, if we start working the positions, then we need a background as well. Then a position of relative. Then we add a border radius of something like XL. Let me show you how we need a border radius. You can see these smooth rounded corners. And then we can add a margin top to put it away. So the margin top, we need it to be inside. So you can see this one is showing on top of the hero section. Ours isn't. We want this one to go on top. So what do? You add a negative margin. So you add a negative margin of something like 2rem or something. Okay. Yes, and then we can start writing our. So I'll use pseudo elements for this, but you can still use actual elements and position them. But I think this one is simpler. So the first thing working in pseudo elements is you need a content. And then position absolute on the pseudo element. Absolute. So why is it position absolute? Is because the parent is position relative, so we are absoluting it position on the parent. So it is based on the parent, essentially. Okay. So the next thing we need to add is a width. This one is like a rectangle that is transformed to be a circle. A width of 500 pixels, and then a height of 500 pixels. Let me see what will be we need a background. So let's add a background image of linear gradient 45 degrees. Just copy it from me. 059 DFF and then hash 36C6FO. What else do we need? Maybe something like a Z index. We wanted to show the index of 1. And then if you remember these elements, I mean, not just jump. Do you see? Then we need it to be a circle. So what do? We add a border radius of 100%. But in Chakra, we can just do border radius full. You see that's a circle. The next thing we need to do is to add a blur to it. So blur. Now we need to add a filter. And then blur 100 pixels. Okay. I know. I hope you start seeing. And then we need to bring this image on top of the blur. All right. So we need to do Z index of 2 because here we have Z index of 1. So essentially the image will show on top. Right? Looks nice. And then we need to hide it whenever it goes beyond the boundaries. So what you do, you say overflow hidden. You can see it. And then the final thing, we need to bring it, where is it? We need to bring it here, this end. Right now, it's everywhere. It's just there. So what we do is we use now the reason for this. We want it to be the bottom. So top will be auto. Top auto says take up the whole width. And then left, I want to push it 250 pixels to the left, which means, so let me just hide this and remove the blur. Save that and go back. Do you see? So we are pushing it 250 pixels to the left. And what does that happen? Its width is 500 pixels. We push it 200 pixels to the left. So what does that leave us with? It is pushed halfway its width. So as I said, we will have it, this circle here. We'll have this circle here. And then, now we just pushed it there, then we need to push it down. So which, as you essentially know, we push it 250 pixels down. So which says bottom of negative 250 pixels. You see? Then we hide it. You guys get me? We hide it. And then something else I also forgot. We need to add a padding so that this thing can be seen. Because now if I say overflow hidden here, here, flow hidden, it's gone. But we need to add some spacing so that we can see it because the picture is above it. So here we need a padding of something like 4. 4 is enough. And then we can see it. And then now finally we blur it. And then we are left with something very, very cool. Okay. And then the blur is too shouting. Then we go ahead and do some opacity. Opacity of 0.2. So What do you need to do on the other side? We need to do the exact same thing. So here, we need to do the exact same thing, but on the opposite side. So let's do that real quick because of time. So now this one will use the other pseudo element after. Okay. Essentially do the same things that I showed you guys, but I'll make sure to do it once more so that it sticks to the position is absolute. The BG image, linear gradient. You can copy this from me. And hash FB 53 43. Then hash 6549 D5. Since I went through the same process previously, let me just, so this one will push it to the top by negative 250 pixels. Push it to the right, negative 250 pixels. Then the bottom now becomes auto because we want it on the top right. Then the DDX is 1. Width 500 pixels. And the height is 500 pixels. Border radius is full. Opacity of 0.2. Then filter blur 100 pixels. And then finally, that's it. That's exactly it. It didn't show up. I don't know why, but let's just check it. So what might have gone wrong? Let's see. Then we have negative 250 pixels. Then this one is exactly what it was there. So let's move on to the next section. The next section was on the brands. This one is the simplest section. This one is for the brands. Now we just go on and create the brands. Home and create a new file, brands.tsx. So then we start creating the brands. So brands. So you saw me not go through the responsive for this because it's exactly responsive. Why? Because I used responsive styles. What are responsive styles? These ones are responsive styles. So the width, this one is a responsive style. The margin is a responsive style. And then the simple grid has columns in a responsive style. So this one essentially says one column from pixels 0 until the medium. The medium is around 768 pixels. We have one column and then two columns. That's why I did not go through that process. So for this one is the simplest one. If you look here, we have brands 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are brand photos. We start with our box as a section. ID is equals to brands. Then we add a margin Y of rem. We want it to be spaced out. And then we add a margin X of margin X. This is our margin. And then if we go back here, we can use a simple grid and divide it into 4 parts. As simple as that. Simple grid. Columns. I'll use responsive columns here. And say, during the base, we need 2 columns. And then in the medium, we need 4. Add a gap between the items. Then justify them in the center. The justify makes them in the center. Let me add that at the end. And then we can loop over. We have 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can do this. Let me show you this syntax. Dot map for each item. We return a box. Yeah, we can use a span as a span, and then the key is the item, and then we need the actual image. So the source, what do you see here? We are looping over 4 numbers, and then we can use that number and then plug in there. Let me just show you. I'll just explain later. So we can say brands, then the item dot png. So during the first iteration, we have 1. Then when it comes here to resolve, it's 1.png. We have it. So width of 200, height of 200, then an alt of, let's just use this brand, then the dollar item. And then that's it. That's it for our brand section. And then we export the brand section. Export default as brand from brand. You can say brands. Go to the home page, then import our brands. You see what I was saying? You can see they are all imported from the same thing because of what I showed you guys. The brands are well, and then we need 2 columns in the smalls. That's exactly it. So we move to the next section. So the next section is the projects. So we follow the same procedure. So the same procedure we have here. We go back to close everything, and then create projects.tsx. Right. Project section. So I want you to go back to the repository, go to projects, grab the projects real quick. Go back, paste them here. So the project pictures are here. You can see them here. Okay, so before we start, we have 2 things here going on. Okay, we have 2 things going on. So something you can realize right now is that we have this beautiful header, and it would be very wrong for us to repeat this header 2, 3 times. This would be very wrong, and then it violates the principle for do not repeat yourself. So we don't want to repeat this. So we are going to create a component that we can inherit. Okay, that component should lie, because it's a component for everyone, should lie in another folder called common, because you can have many things that are in common. Okay, and then I'll call it something like the section header. Then we can see, so in our section header, so we are creating this thing. What do you see? You see a text that has a gradient, the same gradient we have been using. We have a heading, then we have a subheading. That's it. Let's just create this. So what did I say? we have a text. Make sure to keenly import from Chakra UI. And then I want to accept these things from other components. So we can use something called an interface to define the shape. We want a subheading, which is a string. We want a main heading, which is a string as well. Then we have the description, which is a string as well. And then we can grab all these from here. Subheading, main heading, description. And then other components will pass this. And then here we can render the subheading. And the next thing we need to do is the heading. We need a heading, which is of main heading. And the final one, we need the text. And then this one is the description. Okay, so I'll do the same thing here, whereby we export it as a default. So it will be section header or section heading, either can do. Then inside the projects, we can start now. Inside the projects, we can now start building our project. So this is a new section. We can start, we can even use a stack because why not? But we can use it either any. Let me just use a stack. So then the margin X, the margin I showed you guys. Then we align everything in the center. And then margin Y, we can say something like 5 rem. So this one is to separate the item from other items. So the margin Y is this one and this one. Okay, so that's it. Then we can import our section heading. Then pass the props that are required. So subheading is the projects. Now we don't need anything like that. Main heading. Check my recent works. Then the description. The description you can do is, I don't know whether it will allow me to, you can just go here and copy the description. And then paste it out there. And then now we can start building and seeing. So export the projects. Then go home and import the projects. This is how it looks like. So the adjustment we need to see is this one needs to look exactly as this one. So the first thing, we work on the testimonials, make it semi-bold, and do the same thing about the background image and the background clip. Then we make this one bigger and bold, and then we darken this text. So let's just do that. So we go back to the section header. So we start with this font weight of semi-bold, font size of something like that, and then we can copy. We added this in the nav bar or the hero. We need to copy these two. These are the exact things that we had been doing. And then the main header, we said just increase the size. And then like 3XL. And if you increase the size, I also want to increase the line height. the Excel as well, and then text align to the center. And then finally, the description. I want it to be grayish. I already told you guys. No, color. Color of gray dot 400. Font size of large. Text align off center. That's it. So if you go back, this should be looking exactly. Yeah, that's very awesome. So the next thing we need to work on is this. You can see now here we have 3 tabs. Now this one is quite simpler. The first thing we need to create is this card, and this card is quite simple. We just have a stack with an image, a text, a heading, and a subheading. Okay. And then we have these tabs. These are called Chakra tabs. So Chakra, again, I said Chakra has this by default. We just need to change the content inside the tabs. So if you come here, we have the tabs. Do you see the difference? No. So the syntax for the tab is like this. So we need the tabs dot root, tab list. This one is the tabs, and then the tab content that matches those tabs. And then they should have their unique. So I don't know whether I should copy this. Let me just copy this and then show you guys. You can close everything and go back to this. And then we need to add the tabs here. So you need the tabs. Just copying this from Chakra UI. There's nothing you need to do. Okay, so now let me show you how it works. So the triggers are those things you see on top that we click. You see? So the tab dot trigger. So so let me see. And the content. The tab content holds the content for each tab. So if you have one trigger, we essentially need, so let me see, the first trigger we can say all, and the value is equals to all. Then that one needs to match. Let me just use a button or the text. Button is better. Hello from all. Okay, and then you specify to the tab content, who are you responsible for? I'm responsible for all. Maybe let's go back so that we can visually see. All. You can see? We have the all. We can add one more. 2, 3, 4. I had like 4. So this one is for the app. This one is for apps. This one is for design. This one is for design. Web. Then we can call this one development. So this one is exact. So the tab list, these tabs need to match exactly what is in the tab content. Okay, so you have content 2, 3, 4. This one is for web, design, and then this one is for the app. Do you see? And then we are faced by an issue. We need them to occupy the whole space, like exactly what is shown here. But if in case you want it to be like that, that's okay. And then we can change the tab indicator. Instead of thinking about that, we can come to the Chakra docs. Okay, indicator, the tabs dot indicator. Okay, you come here and check, fitted, controlled, disabled, manual activation, dynamic animation, all these. But I'll show you. So in case you wanted to fill the whole space, you say fitted, you add a prop called fitted, and then you give it a default value. This is the value that will show by default, which is all, matches this and this. And then they give it a color palette of primary. So more on the color palettes, the color palette that dictates what should show. Maybe for the indicator is a color palette for a component, essentially. So you look at this. So you can see the color has changed. So that some of these have issues. But the trigger app. So all app design and web, and then all app design and web. So we are faced by some issues. Let's try to fix them. So we have a tab.root, then we have the fitted, we give it the color palette, we have the tab list, and then the tab content. So here is where the error came. So we have the tab list and then the tab content which matches the tab list. Tab content 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can use this as it is because right now the space is just here. But if we add contents that fill the space, then that one will fit the space required. So the next thing we need to create is this card. And since the card is used all over, we can create another component down here for the card only. We can call it something like const. So project card is equals to, we grab the thumbnail, the label, then come and type them here. Thumb is of string, label is of string. This one is a component. You can create it in another folder, but for easy purposes, let's just do this. And then we can return stack. Then this stack, let me just explain what is happening. We need a stack. A stack, we said, essentially is a flex component that has display flex direction column. So we need an image, the heading, and the description, the label. So we can start with the image. We need to wrap the image inside a box. Then you say the height is 20, then 20 rem. The image, make sure to pick the image from Next.js. And then the source. The source is the thumbnail. Width is 500. Height is 500. Alt is project image. You can make sure it's better. Then this one is not a Chakra component, and I don't feel like adding a box and giving it as child because of simple style. So I can just do some inline. You can say 100%, height 100%, check fit of cover. Why do we need two widths? So this width is for what the image is being fetched. This one is for the rendered. So you fetch 500 width and then display 100% of this 20 rem. Okay. And then we continue. Remember we have a stack. So the emet is slow, and then heading. label, then the text development. And this one should be, yeah, you can pass more props because I just passed two. There's no issue. If you can see the card as well. So something I'll just explain is that you can see inside these two there is a padding. So we'll just add that padding. Then you can realize this box has border radius, overflow of hidden because the image is not overflowing, and a background, this one. So we come here and say, can say a background of gray dot 800, overflow hidden, border radius of Excel. Now the final task is to display this in our image, in our, so you can see this one is a simple grid. Also it's a grid which with 3 items equally spaced, and he said in a simple grid you can see this one is 2. If you add 3, I don't know whether this one is editable. It's not editable, I would have shown you, but we're going to use this component and then display the cards of the type. Now if you go here, you can see now these ones have a type, so we can use this type to filter and show each of them. Okay, yeah, I hope I'm not confusing anyone. So the first thing we can do, remove the button and then a simple grid. Then I'll just write responsive styles right away because they are simpler. During the base I want one card or maybe two. Actually, let me have one, and then in the from 768 we have 3, and then gap of 8, and then projects, our projects here, dot filter, we want the ones, no, if it's all, we are not filtering anything, we just show dot map for each item. We also need the I for the index. Project, our project card now, key is equals to I, and then we destructure the items. Now if you go back, now these ones are following each other. We need to add a width of 100% because it's not taking the whole width, because I say a background of blue. No, this one is taking, it should take. So I saw columns, not column. So I hope no one doesn't make the same mistake like me. And then remove the color. Now everything looks exactly. But if you go to the others, they don't have. So on the others, because it's a filter, you still need this. But now we filter based on the type. This type. This type. To match the exact one we want. I want to copy this. Then keep it there. And then dot filter. We want to filter those that have the type of app. I can call this J, but it's the item. And then say item, now J. a.type. Then we go doing the same thing for the others, filtering. This one is for design. And then finally this one is for web. And then that's all for that. Now if you filter, you can see just see those that have apps, the design. We don't have the design. Let me check what. No, it's UX, not design. My bad. So it's called UI, not UX. Yeah. So it's UI. Then remove unused imports. For development we have, for the design we don't. Okay. Filter the type that is UI. I think we have that type. It's UI. So the design has an issue. This one is the design. Make sure it. No, we have the spelling. That's how you debug, by the way. And then here we said all, the default value is all. That's it for that. Then we continue to the next step, which is to add the testimonials and then finally the latest news in the contact. So the testimonial is a bit simpler. We just add one card and then you remember this. So we just reuse it. So you go to the testimonials. You know the steps we do? Yeah, I hope you do. Testimonials.tsx. The testimonials, we can do the same thing. Pick up the stack. I can use a stack mx of margin x lane equals to center y is equals to 5 frame. So these are basic stuff. The align is aligning them in the center, and then the margin y is to add the space. Let me show you again. This space 1, 2. Then the first thing we do is using a section heading. We did this in the previous section. By the way, I can just copy this from the projects. Section heading copies from this. Copy that. Then change this one to test. Okay, now this one we need to export it. Default as testimonials. Then go to the page and add the testimonial. Okay, you see this? Now this is the power of reusing. You see now we did reuse this heading instead of rewriting it. Then the next thing is to create this card. Let's start with the card. And then finally we map over them. But we can just create them. So first thing we can do is to have the testimonial card. And we can return stack. Something I forgot here. ID is testimonials as section. So it's a section. And then we need to wrap the image So I'll just wrap it. I can even wrap it with the box so that I can align it to the center. And either can do. So let's wrap the image. Then have the image. Now I need to use a stack here because of aligning. Let me use a stack because aligning might be an issue. Because by the flex, instead of if you need something to be perfectly at the middle, you need to use a flex there so that it can do the other. So you can just copy whatever I'm writing here, the image. Then width, we can say 200, height of 200, out of tech with twin. Then the style, you remember us doing this. This one is not a chakra component, so we can just style style the way it was used to style. So the width is 100%, height of 100, and object fit of cover. That is a stack. And then this one is the image that is on top. And then we need to give it a height and width that it will follow, but I told you we can use a box size of 7 rem. Then you saw it had a border. Let me just add the border, show you which border is it. So 4 pixels, solid. We don't need it to overflow. So you say overflow hidden. You need to give the parent position relative. But let's first see how we need to show it. So what I can do, this is a simple grid with 3 columns. So it's as simple as just doing like this. Simple grid. Then you can add a margin top, something like 5 rem. Let me just don't add it so that you can see. Set for the columns, I will use responsive styles. I want 1 column in the base, and the medium I want 3. Then the gap of 8. And then need 3 cards, so we can just do dot map for each item. Testimonial card and the key, the item, and then like that. All right, so you can see where we are starting at for the image. Let's style the stack that is holding it and add a background, all these stuffs, and see how it looks like. So is the text, that heading, and the position. So you can have a text. And you can have a stack that holds the title of the person with the heading. And then the position. Senior app developer. So you can see what we are at. Okay, so something is wrong. Okay. So the background didn't show. Let's check. So we need to add a background here. BG of gray.800. position of narrative. It has a border radius, you can say XL, then you can increase the gap between the items to around 4. So let's continue. The testimonial card is not showing the right way. So let's try to troubleshoot and see what's the issue. Let me remove the overflow. Not here. Let me just remove from the image. It is removed. So this position is absolute. And then top is 0. If you know about absolute positioning, this is how we started it. The top is 0. So let's assume this. Let's assume this is let's try this. I don't know whether this will help me do what I want. So let's see, this is our container. Top 0 is here. Top 0. And then left 50%, we say this is our left. If you say left 50% and is something like that, that's somewhere there. But it is not normally aligned. So there's a trick called transform, translate, and then you push it half of its width forward or minus, and then push it on top with the same stuff. Like, let me just show you. So I forgot to add the border radius of full here. The position is absolute, and then the left 50%, then transform. The left doesn't cater for the width, so we push it 50% to the left, to the right, and then 50% to the top, so it gets perfectly positioned. Yes, so we did all that, and then let's check we add the background for the parent, the border radius. Then we added the gap. We also need some padding, something like 2rem. The padding top where the image needs to be very huge, because you can see, since this one is position absolute, if you add this, if you don't cater for the height of this, so the height of from the image to the text should be at least twice, halfway, not twice. So sorry, this is the size of the image, so it needs to be at least 3.5 and above. So that's why I added 5, because 3.5 would be somewhere here, then we need it to be a bit lower. Okay. And then the text should be center. It's the alignment of the text. Then that should be about it. Okay, something I forgot is the same thing we have been doing here. So we make it somehow bold and clip it. So we can just go to the hero and copy all that stuff. Copy this, paste, and then font weight, semi-bold. We have unused imports, then we just remove them. Something is wrong. We don't have the. It looks like we don't have the actual data. Okay, yeah, we don't. So the name. Okay, not there, not there, not there. Let me just copy that text. I don't want to. I'm gonna copy the text. Go back. Some of these are not showing, so let's debug this. All right, so let's see where the issue is at. Let's check the issues. So we need to check where the issue is. So must be somewhere here. Let's see, the text align is similar. Position relative, border radius, the gap, then this one absolute. So the issue must be here on the. Let me just add some padding the margin here and see what will happen. Then the gap. Okay, then okay. I don't know what's wrong. Let me refresh the screen. I need to check this again. So we have the testimonials here. They are exported from here, from here. Then we have our simple grid. And you have the columns. Then you say this one is a testimonial card, and then the key is the item itself. So we go to the testimonial card. Then we have the padding. I don't know why this one is not showing. Oh, I know that. So this one should be outside. This one should be here. Then everything should work now. Yeah. Okay, guys. So let's continue to the final section, which is the latest news. As you can see, same structure as the card in the project, only that this one has some similar structure. So let's go real quick and create that. So we can move all this, go and create the blogs. This is the blog section. So similarly, we can go to the brands and copy the section on not the brands, but the projects. Copy this section. We'll start with the stack. The ID will be blogs. This one is for navigation purposes only. Then as section, then the margin X. You know why we are using this margin X. Align items in the center. I think we should add. We should space out this one. I have not shown you why we are using the margin Y, but I will. Then we paste the section heading here. Then this one is the latest news. Then here is our latest. Save that. Okay, we forgot something. we need to export it and import it in our component tree. So default as blogs from the blogs, and then we import our blogs. You can just come here and import them here. So if you go back, you should see our latest news. You see how the power of reusing these components. The next thing is a simple grid with 3 blogs. Okay. So the first thing, we go to the blogs here and grab the blogs. So we go home, then go to the blog section and paste that there. The news, and then we start building the news. So the first thing is I wanted to show you how you need the margin Y. And then you see, you now see how close it is to this. I want it to be a bit far. So you can save that, then start a simple grid. I've already shown you how to use the simple grid. Count rest times. So the margin top, to space this one out from the section heading. And then the columns, base we want 1, and then in the midpoint, breakpoints we need 3. Then the gap is 8. Then the next thing is to map through the news. So we do news.map for each blog and its index. We create a stack. And then the key will be the I. The background is gray.800, border radius, Excel, overflow, hidden. Let me show you the thought process again. So we have the background, gray.800. We have the border radius, and then we have the overflow hidden. The next one is to create the image card. So I'm going to use a stack as well for styling purposes. No, let me just use a box. So a box, then I have the image inside. Now let me just use the simpler hand. So first of all, we do is the source. Okay, blog.thumbnail. Width is of 500. Height of 500. Alt is the blog.title. And then next up is this thing. So it has a padding. You can see this is the padding. And then it has the text in the title, just like that. So we come here, let's say a stack. Padding is 4. And then the text, I just showed you this. And the text, we say TechWithTwin / blog.date. All these properties are here: blog.date, blog.title, and blog.thumbnail. And then this one has a different color. Color is equals to gray.400. And then the heading with blog.title. This is the syntax to evaluate JavaScript in JSX React. I hope you guys are following. And then if we go back, we are almost there. Perfect. Then we go to the final step, where is to add the footer. So similarly, Similarly to the nav bar, the footer we add it separately. Then we add a component called index.js. So we are going to create the footer. Then the footer. What else do we need for the footer? This one will just use a box that wraps everything as footer. For semantics, the padding, or some padding, and border top of 2 pixels solid. Then we can use the gray color. Then we need that. And then now we need a flex that will carry. Just show you. So we just added the border top and then some padding. You can see there's some padding. Then we add a flex with 2 items, this side and the other side, justified space between. So we justify them. We'll add that later. Let me just do this. Then we go to the project, go to the footer, grab the footer items, these ones. So we can paste the footer items here. So the first thing we need to do is to grab the footer items. Let's first add a note. Let's not add. Do footer items dot map for each item text. Item. And then next up is the okay, we need another flex for this because a flex justifies the containers. So we need only 2 containers here. So we need to wrap that. And then we add the copyright, or just copy the copyright from the. Don't worry guys, I'll forward the link of the live link before uploading. Okay, so that way. And then come to the layout. At the end we add the footer. Okay, all right. So let's see how our footer looks like. So we first need to justify space between. So come and do here justify space between. That one is gone. We need a margin. That looks nice. Then we need some gaps in case they come too close. Then here we also need the gap. The gap is well and good. And then we need to change the color of this to match whatever is here in this. So color 100 and this one. Now they look similar. Now let me show you something else. Now it is too much close. So we need to change it to something like the direction on base column. Let it be column. On MD, let it be row. Okay, that's it. And that's it, guys. I think we're almost through. So what is remaining is to make the navigation links work. When you click, it goes to the home. And as you saw, I added IDs to the section. So I'm going to leave that up to you guys. And then once you figure out how to do it, I want to see your live link in the comment section. I'll review them manually and see how you came up with all those. So your task, let me just add it here. I'll push this branch as final branch, live coded. And then what you need to do first is to make sure the navigation you need to make the mobile by making the links clickable and closing. What else do I need you guys to do? Add a contact form or a page and link the so that's it, guys. And if you liked this tutorial, make sure you like the tutorial, subscribe, and share with your friends for more videos like this. Yes, thank you. I'll also share the link of the live project in the description, so watch out. Thank you.